And we are live here to chat about all of the TV that we watched this week, plus some news, plus some fun comparisons that might be kind of going between Marvel and DC, but this isn't a Marvel versus DC thing. I'm very excited to dive into it. I'm very excited to be caught up on quite a few things like Stargirl and She-Hulk and all of that. But even more than that, I am excited to have Carey and Kate joining me. Hi, Carey. Hi, Kate. How have you guys been since we last chatted 2 weeks ago?
Been fantastic.
Good, good.
Kate's sweatshirt matches my straw. Well, what do you think? Should we kick it off with some news? I think we do have actually a few pieces of news to cover this week. Kate, as our news guru, you kick us off.
So I don't have enough news. I am super well informed of, although we do have some others on the list that I know about. But big news that I'm super excited about is that Critical Role officially announced that their season 2 of Legends of Vox Machina will come out in January, the end of January. And they also announced that they've been officially greenlit for their 3rd season.
So exciting. And they announced that at New York Comic Con, right? Were there any other big announcements that we know of from either of you, Carey or Kate? Were there any other big announcements that we know of that came out of New York Comic Con? Sometimes some key things are announced there.
Not that I recall. I'm pretty sure there's been some movement dates for movies
Yeah.
Delayed a couple months or whatever, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were some movie premiere delays. I think I saw. Sorry, Kate, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I can't think of anything specific. I'm pretty sure I heard of a couple things, but nothing that's typically on anybody's radar here.
Yeah. Well, I know there were a few things that I think we already had a premiere date, but are coming up soon. We've got Enola Holmes. The second season of that comes out beginning of November, which I'm so excited about. That show is fantastic. Forget everything you think you like or dislike about genre television that involves children. It's very, very good. Genre television that involves teens at that, and it's still very good. Genre period television. Okay, you get the point. I know that there were some controversy articles coming out. I guess the two leads deleted their social media. I don't know if they're I don't know what's going on there, but that was another piece that I saw kind of floating around in the social media verse, generating some buzz. And it made me think that I wonder if they're going to have intentional kind of controversy buzz leading up to season 3 of Bridgerton in order to promote it. Just a thought. And then the other thing that I saw buzzing all over my socials was the fact that it's the Arrow 10-year anniversary, and a bunch of the cast posted old photo dumps and videos and stuff like that. And that was really fun. And I know all three of us here are kind of party to that.
yes, feels a little old.
Yeah, I saw
10
all
years,
that.
man.
Crazy. I was a whole different person back then. The other thing that I don't know if this is news, but it's kind of following up on something that we talked about. I think Kate brought it to the news segment a couple, times ago, was the movie Amsterdam, which we were kind of looking forward to. That premiered, and that not only flopped, but I've seen some, and this is probably you're not supposed to record it because it's probably in a movie theater or whatever. I've seen little clips of it, similar in the way, similar to how right after Don't Worry Darling came out, and there were some clips floating around of just objectively terrible acting from Harry Styles. And I believe a couple weeks after that was when he was pulled from another kind of Oscar buzz film and replaced with somebody else. Bad. Well, I kind of had my eye on Amsterdam, and Kate, I know you did too, because the plot of it looks fantastic. The trailer of it looks fantastic, but movie itself is projected to lose a bunch, and there's some it looks truly awful, just like really like badly done despite having very big name. Like I'll watch anything Anya Taylor-Joy is in, and even that, like it was bad. There was some scene of like them getting like splattered with blood or something like that, and it was just like very stage play, poorly blocked, oddly cut.
Hmm. That's interesting. Is there
I
like
guess
a
that
sort
gives an
of like an
explanation of why we didn't hear much about it till the very last minute, because we did.
does there appear to be like sort of like in not overwhelming, but sort of like a general consensus of what went wrong, or no?
It's I think it's directorial, and maybe people are pinning it on the director actually, because I think there was another controversy that came up with the director. I believe that the director is associated with some other potential criminal charge, but I can't speak to that. I don't know anything about it, but there was some other thing that was kind of generating some controversy for the film that I saw mentioned. But the cast in it is fantastic, like very, this is stacked cast. It cannot be acting quality. It has to be something going on with the directorial work. But I truly like, I thought Don't Worry Darling, like the clips of Mr. Styles acting was pretty bad. This was worse than that, and it was with big name actors. I don't know what's going on, but I've never seen something quite that startlingly bad with that big of names, except for like maybe, I don't know, probably how most people felt watching Cats, but I'm fine with cheesy musicals, so whatever. Anyways, that to me that was news, but Anya Taylor-Joy was involved, so of course it was. Well, for tonight, I think we're going to start off talking about She-Hulk and Stargirl. And Carey, I know you've been keeping up with both of these. So before I dive in, are you current on both She-Hulk and Stargirl, or just like within the last couple episodes of them?
I am current, other than the fact that Stargirl is airing at the moment we speak. But yeah,
Literally
current.
right as we speak.
As
Yes.
current can be. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yes, I am as well. So the reason why I wanted to talk about these two together. Now, I know we had previously, I think last week you had kind of talked about some similarities and differences. Correct me if I'm wrong, between Stargirl and Only Murders in the Building. So we've kind of already paired
Yeah.
her up. And this week, I want to talk about similarities and differences between the romantic themes that we've seen in Stargirl recently. The last two episodes of Stargirl had a really strong romantic theme. We're getting our, dare I say, main romance. I don't know. The show, I'm sure, will pull a love triangle out of somewhere. But we're bringing those to the forefront. And then we also saw a really romantic and chemistry, filled episode where we see She-Hulk and Daredevil get to meet in the latest episode. Spoilers, I guess, kind of a big spoiler there. Now, both of these really kind of rode their storyline on chemistry. So, my first question for you, Carey, is what do you think both of these shows are doing right, if anything, if you liked both of the latest developments? What do you think they're doing right in the chemistry and romance department?
Well, I mean, I'll say this. It obviously starts with like the actors, right? So I'll say both of them feel like they've got that right. But I'll say this with a caveat. I don't know if it's my age or whatever the case may be, but I just find myself not being incredibly interested or invested in the Cameron Courtney relationship because I'm just at an age where it's like, okay, that's cool, that's fun. I think it's problematic in a couple ways, but I'm just like, okay, can we get past this? And I think it's probably just I'm becoming a curmudgeon. I don't know. That might be it.
I think it's super fair. I mean, not only are they teens when we're looking at Stargirl, they're quite young teens. I will
Mhm.
say Stargirl is absolutely one of the shows that is guilty of having like somebody who looks a whole 40 years old playing a teenager. I can't remember his name, but the friend in the friend group who was like really pissed when Cameron came up to the table and was like, "We're working on a project or whatever." This gentleman has a 401k and a mortgage and five
Well, see,
kids. Like, that
it,
cannot be a child.
Well, no, it's funny you should mention. I think he's probably one of the younger members of the cast. He's
Stop.
23. You want to know
Carey,
who's the
he
oldest?
looks like 40 years old.
Do you want to know who the oldest? Now you're talking about Cameron is you're talking about Rick, I believe, who is sitting at the table.
Yes, Rick.
Yeah,
That's the one that
yes,
looks
he's
ancient to me.
yeah. I think he's only 23.
Okay.
Um, the guy that plays Cameron is 28, but guess who's the oldest?
It's gonna be the girl who with the glasses. I'm trying to remember her name. Who has the she talks to Dr. McKnight or whatever the situation is.
Beth. No, it's not her.
Is it the
It's
cat, the wildcat girl?
yes, she's freaking 30,
Wow.
30.
She pulls it off.
Exactly.
She pulls it off.
Yes, she
I
does.
buy her as a
Yes, she does.
teen. Like I don't buy her as a real
Yeah.
teen, but like I buy her as like a character teen.
Right.
Well done.
Right. But here's what more than just the sort of teen angst that it is what it is. But what bothers me more is, and I don't know if it's a trope or not, but they're presenting this storyline of Courtney losing herself in this relationship, right?
Hmm.
So it's like it can really sort of only go one of two ways, right? It's either going to be that she loses herself in this relationship and ultimately Cameron turns and she's heartbroken and dusted, or it's a situation where she proves that like sticking by him and loving him, and particularly when everyone else around her is saying, "Don't do it, girl. This is crazy." Um, it's just that they're sort of defining what she's going to be this season through a relationship, and it's problematic right now because she seems to have lost herself in it. So I'll be it'll be important how they sort of navigate the end game to what this relationship means and how it defines her. And I am just finding myself sort of concerned that they're trying to define like a teen character who's supposed to be the lead of the show through a relationship where she seems to be at such a disadvantage. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I just find that kind of dangerous to a degree.
Yeah. I think they give good precedent for why she would get so lost in this relationship and why she identifies so much with him and how this is a romance thing, but it's also identity because of both of their fathers and both of them, being different from their fathers or being disillusioned about their fathers. And obviously she has kind of like a little bit of a savior complex. She thinks she can fix him because she's recently fixed what's her name? Cynthia, what's the
Yeah,
Cindy,
Cindy.
right?
Yes.
Yes. She's recently fixed, and I'm using this loosely, but she's brought her into, this young JSA situation, and she's kind of, got her on the side of good. And I think that has empowered Courtney to feel like she could fix more people and she could continue to do this. And certainly she can fix somebody who to her probably doesn't seem as abrasive as even Cindy was. What I think they're doing right is kind of building up this slow burn in chemistry. They have little to no plot around the two of them. All of the reasons why like he needed to be away from her because he didn't want to hurt her. It's very like kind of drummed up, easily solved, kind of like plot fluff and a little Twilighty, but like honestly, what isn't Twilighty? Kate's off screen right now, but I think she would agree with me. Let's bring Kate on screen. I want. Okay, you're here for the facial reactions, Kate. All right. Well, Kate, you're not up to date on Stargirl or She-Hulk, right? Or are you?
No,
Okay, you're here for
no,
facial
you're
reactions and advisement on romantic tropes. All right, so with the whole plot line, it's pretty cliche. There's not much depth to it, but the chemistry is pretty good, and they do some interesting things. And I'll tell you because I was looking for a Stargirl thumbnail for the video that we're doing right now, and I found one of their kiss. And I noted like their first kiss, and what I noticed, which I kind of noticed at the time, but I realized how prominent it was when I was trying to find like a a thumbnail of it was how obvious they had her like kind of like stand back and almost back away from him as he's like leaning in to kiss her, just so that like he's not very tall, but so it makes it look like he's towering over her, and it kind of makes it look like he's the one going for it. Like we don't have like a Hitch 90-10 situation or 80-20 or whatever it's supposed to be. Like while they're making him come across as sort of soft, they're also making him come across as like he's really going after her. He's really doing things to like kind of like get her emotions, whatever, while also doing this like push away thing of like, but I don't want to hurt you. The chemistry, fantastic. Storyline, borderline not there to toxic. Now let's contrast that with what we've got going on, I'm sure extremely temporarily, with She Hulk and Daredevil. What did you think of that romantic situation?
I don't
It
watch
was it
She-Hulk
was
at all.
it was fun, right? You have two people who are like really good at their jobs, who are like really good looking people. And of course you're sitting there, it's like, well, of course they're going to have some chemistry and get together and have some fun, right? So, I mean, and I'll be honest, I've never watched Daredevil, so I don't know what he's like or what he's been like in his own show.
I've
But in
never
this
watched
show,
Daredevil either. This was my literal
yeah,
first time meeting him.
yeah,
Kate, did you watch Daredevil?
No.
Okay. Well, we're
yeah.
all at a loss
Yeah.
here. Go on.
Yeah, yeah. I just didn't know if he was the kind of guy who could have fun. I didn't know if he was basically like Oliver Queen season one, like couldn't crack a smile or what. But you could just, I mean, the chemistry they had was really cool to see. Um, and of course, the absolute favorite scene was in people are calling it the Walk of Shame, which was an absolute blast to see. I've heard some people say it wasn't really a walk of shame. It was just that he wasn't walking in his shoes because he didn't have his cane and he needed to walk on grass to feel where he was going, which is probably a
Oh,
cop out. But it was just fun. It was absolutely fun.
that was fun.
I'll be honest. I'll be honest, and I know this is going to make me sound like a little creepy, but you know what I was kind of like expecting to see, but we did not. And I know this is a Disney Plus show, but when they went behind the door and you could see their feet, I thought they were going to pan up. I just thought that they were
I
going to
kind
pan
of
up
thought
for
they
like,
were going to go a little more risque as well. And I don't know what She-Hulk is rated. And I've really kind of gone back and forth on like, I think maybe 2 or 4 weeks ago, I said, I think I understand what demographic She Hulk is going for. They're going for like young professionals, like early to mid career professionals who still have some nostalgia to like the early era, like Avengers and Marvel stuff, want something fairly light though to watch like on a given weeknight, and probably people who like don't have kids. But watching this latest one, they didn't go as explicit as I thought they would. So I'm like, maybe this is going for either a slightly younger demo and I'm just not realizing it, or an older demo that would have kids around, which I know is like such a weird thing to focus on, but this is where my brain goes with TV shows.
yeah, no, I certainly understand. But even if they wanted to play it sort of like still PG-13, they could have gone for the joke that they've established like from the first episode, Captain America's butt, right? I
Hmm.
mean, that was like, so if they had panned up and shown like his butt and she had said something about it, it's like, yeah, Captain America who, that would have been
That would
like
have been
a
really
good
funny.
payoff joke, right? Yeah. And I don't know if they thought about that, but I just was expecting a pan up shot and didn't get it. So that was a little disappointing.
Yeah. Well, much like Daredevil, they're not allowing you to see. But was that funny? Maybe, maybe not. Thank you for the pity laugh from both of you. Um, so their chemistry, I felt like, was pretty off the charts. And thus far with She-Hulk, we've got, I think, a really good balance of focusing on her identity as a lawyer, focusing on her identity as a person, and focusing on her identity as also this like superhero entity separate from her personhood. And they've definitely kept those two quite separate. She will talk in the third person when she's referring to She-Hulk, and you know, kind of vice versa. I'm not sure if we've seen She-Hulk refer to her in the third person, have we?
I don't I don't believe we have.
Sure, it's like
No.
Jen or whatever.
I do have a question for you though. And I just sort of popped into my head. And so we've seen in a couple of episodes this season where um, obviously Jen has sort of been on this sort of hunt to find like a really cool relationship that she could
Mhm.
have, right? So I'll be interested to know from you, were you expecting that once she had this chemistry with Daredevil, that they were going to make it a bigger thing than it was in terms of like, hey, this might be like a potential relationship, or because I mean, it felt like, hey, this is just a hit it and quit it situation, which is incredibly cool and fine. I'm just based on sort of what they've established and tried to set up that she was on this hunt, and then she obviously had her heart broken in the previous episode or whatever. I'm just wondering if this was just sort of like a situation that she decided, it's like, hey, I just want to have fun, see what this is, and keep it moving. Or was there ever any thought from you that like that felt a little too casual for what she's been like looking for this season?
It didn't feel too casual to me because I went into this episode knowing that this would have been a cameo. I know he's like his own entity and he's probably not going to be a regular or even recurring character on the show. So my expectations were already that this was going to be in and out, no pun intended. And when it got to that point, it felt like, there was enough chemistry for her to kind of like justify this sort of casual thing. And they've sort of, not that there's like morality associated with it, but they've already kind of associated they've already established, I guess, like her morality and preferences when it comes to dating, that she is somebody who will do casual hookups, but she wants a relationship, but she at least wants her casual hookups to be respectful, like whatever, right? And like I, as a viewer, and her as a character can like feel very different about it, but I can understand how she would have felt about that in the moment. And I think they kind of, by having her say to the camera throughout this entire episode so many times that she was like so into him and like, is there chemistry? Is there something going on here? Is he, like all of that and like showing all the flirting and stuff like that? And here's what's important. All of her comments about him were like pretty much associated with like his physical appearance or like some kind of surface level personality trait. This wasn't like, is this love? Twitter
Hmm.
pated, like butterflies swirling around her head. Like it was very much like leading up to like a casual thing, which you as a viewer, I think, led to expect. I'm going to be honest, and I'm not trying to sound like a prude. I don't tend to like or romanticize that in a TV show or a movie or anything. Like just the whole like, oh, it's just a casual hookup and it meant nothing. That came up in a recent movie that I watched. What was it? The Hating Game? Was it, Kate? Did we read that book or did we watch that movie or something like that? It was a
I
romance book turned
haven't.
into a movie. And they have this whole thing of like the main characters, like just after like a casual, it often comes across as like really cheesy and unbelievable and like, call me a prude, call me whatever you want. I don't tend to like love that. Like, I'm here for the romance. And most of the time I could take or leave a sex scene. You know what I mean? But in this case, I found it pretty cute. I don't know. Maybe
So
the show broke me.
it's just an interesting thing because most most characters, male or female, really don't get an opportunity to do that unless it's a situation where it's like it feels demeaning when it's sort of like a casual situation. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I never would have cared about this person anyway, and you know that she does, but still, it's like, hey, this is great. It was cool when it happened. Let's keep it moving.
Yeah. Or like if it is something that's supposed to be like a one-off, it's kind of like in Wonder Woman where it's like they knew it was like their last chance before potentially the end of the world or before one of them dies or last chance before one of them goes off to war. Like those kind of tropes of like this is going to be the last time you see each other, but they have like one romantic night of passion, blah blah blah. But that's often couched as even enhanced romance. Like higher romance, not at all casual, even if it is like known by both parties that it's like that and no more type of thing, which also I don't like because most of the time those end up being situations if like lost love for years and years and come back to like those are just not my favorite tropes. Like give me Stockholm syndrome, give me forced proximity. Like those are gonna, fake dating. I like a fluffier trope most of the time. In this case, I found it kind of cute. However, if they did want to have him come back and be like a recurring character or whatever, I think they would also make a really fun, like, actually dating couple.
I would not be shocked and or amazed if they share more screen time, whether it's on his show, her show, or in some movie someplace. Yeah, once you capture that, you find a way to continue ways to explore it, have
Yep.
fun with it, or whatever. So,
They could be like a highly independent, dating couple that like lives in separate cities and like occasionally you see them calling each other, showing up on each other's show type of vibe, but well, I don't know.
because it would,
I feel
yeah,
like
it would
he
be, it
has
would,
a love interest on his show though. I feel like he was like in a love pentagon if I remember right. And again, I never watched it, but I hear things on the street.
well, any relationship that they would have, whether it's personal or professional, is organic, right? Because they do
Yeah.
the same thing. So, yeah, it's a whole lot easier for them to be in each other's orbit. So,
Yeah. Well, I think we talked about the highs and lows of both, but I think it was really clear from both of us that we're more into what's going on She-Hulk in terms of romance than what's going on Stargirl, and that's okay cuz not everything is for everybody, and despite the fact that I think most of the cast of Stargirl is a lot closer to my age than they want to admit, I recognize that the show that they're making is for teens. That being said, I think the relationship we saw for on She-Hulk was arguably a little bit healthier, whereas the one that's going on Stargirl is going to be like a little bit codependent and twilighty. But that's neither here nor there. Kate, I think it is time for what I'm going to call commercials with Kate, wherein you're going to pitch to us the movie that you were pitching to me earlier that I want to hear more about. You know the one. Take it away.
Okay, I know the one. So Amazon made a movie called Catherine Called Birdie. It is based on a novel, which is a journal style novel. It's probably supposed to be mid-grade, higher mid-grade level uh, book, but it follows this girl in medieval England, kind of being faced with the proposition of being married off at age 14, because she's a woman now, and that happened.
Wild.
And it follows
Go to
her
jail. Do not collect
wild. I know.
$100.
Um, mm, yeah. So they kind of have her explore her year, and in the book, it is truly an exploration of her deciding to, instead of wanting to be all these other things, recognizing that she can't be a monk and she can't be a crusader and all these other things that she wishes she could be because she's a woman. She has to learn to accept and appreciate the things that she does like, that she has in her life, and stop resenting everything that she can't change and instead enjoy what she has. And the movie is a really, really great adaptation all the way up until the very last scene. Um, so it follows kind of the same storyline. It does kind of, because it's no longer a journal, it actually fleshes out a lot of the other characters a lot more. It adds more story. The humor is very modern but very funny. Um, there's a lot of familiar faces in this. The acting is actually fantastic. The main character, or the main actress, is Bella Ramsey,
Mhm.
who was the really young lady in Game of Thrones. You haven't watched all of Game of Thrones,
Arya?
so you didn't see her, but she's fantastic. No, there's I can't remember what her name is supposed to be in Game of Thrones, but she takes charge of a house at age 12.
Okay.
So this actress is fantastic in the role she does. I have an issue with the last scene because it kind of gives a redemption arc to a character that didn't need a redemption arc, instead of actually just giving her own uh, agency and deciding that she's okay with some of the things that happen in her life, and accepting some of the things that she's been fighting for so long, and not just the "ooh, I'm 14, I have to marry an old man." It's more of she's accepting who she is and stops resisting her flaws, and more learns to accept the world as it is as a whole, and learn to thrive in what she's presented with, rather than fight a battle that she could never win. Um, the movie kind of gives her father a redemption arc that he didn't deserve, but other than that, it was a really great adaptation. I think it did a really great job of encapsulating the tone of the book, and expanding upon it. And it kind of serves, I don't know if you've ever read the Judy Blume book, God, It's Me, Margaret.
No, but I've heard of it.
Okay, it's a very much like this is the movie, the book that you set your little girl down that you was about to go into puberty and go, this is what this, huh? So it's kind of a new version of that, and it's very adorably done. It's very cute and humorous.
Like setting up
Um,
somebody well for
and
like a coming of age rather than it being like
yes,
every point in
exactly.
a coming of age story. Nice. Okay, cool.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's very much because she's still so young. It's not a full coming of age. It's more of like that really awkward time of tweens
Yeah.
where you go from being a child to being a teenager, and that is the specifics of this movie.
Well, it sounds so good, and I definitely want to watch it. I do not
Yeah.
have Amazon Prime, and I definitely would not steal it from anybody else, and I'm definitely not logged into it on my TV. But somehow, some way, I might use Magic and watch it. It sounded really good when you first
Mhm.
mentioned it to me. I immediately looked it up, and I was like, "What? What is this? Is this a period piece? Is this for kids? Is this for whatever?" And
Mhm.
that's why I wanted to hear more about it. And let me tell you, Kate has never recommended anything bad to me. In fact, there's a book that she recommended to me, loaned to me like a billion years ago, and I was still reading. And I will tell you, I had one of the most lovely afternoons. I'm about to sound like 105 years old, sitting on my front porch
Mhm.
on a little rocker on my front porch. And the tree outside my house is like so vibrantly bright red, and the leaves are falling, and I was reading this wonderful book that Kate recommended to me that's essentially like pro Luddite, which I have such a, despite being chronically online, I have such a soft spot for like Luddite propaganda. So good. 10 out of 10. It's called The Word Exchange. Um,
Mhm.
Shall we jump into the next item on our agenda, which is a check back in with Carey? Now, Carey, you've been on a bit of a journey when it comes to only murders in the building. You listened to Kate and I probably spoil the entire thing. And if you're smart, you really didn't listen and just let it go in one ear and out the other. And I think that's what happened. And then you went back and you watched it. And since we last spoke and saw each other, we have spoken since this, but you got to the season 2 finale. I want to know all of your thoughts in great detail because, yes, we've messaged a bit behind the scenes about your thoughts and my thoughts and Kate's thoughts and like, was it what we expected? But like, tell us in detail. What did you think of that wrap up?
Overall, season two was really, really fun. I like the things that they expanded on. I like the opportunity that we got to sort of spend more time with these folks these characters that we like, and sort of some of the ancillary folks also. And so I like the way that they sort of expanded their world and breathed more life into it. The finale it in even a season one finale, I had a little bit of an issue with it. I thought that it was a little too broad in terms of what her end plan was. It's like, now I'll just kill everyone, right? Um, the and I don't know exactly what it is about the season two finale. Well, maybe I do. It was sort of like I did like the sort of misdirection in what happened with Cinda Cannon and all that. So I thought that that was fun. I thought the sort of needle dropped a little bit was when what's her name was Alice when she stuck oh boy with the knife, and of course at that point everything just stopped because it was like we know that's not the end game, right? So what does that mean? And it sort of pulled me out of like what was going on for like a second because then it's like, okay, this isn't. I mean, this obviously can't be real. This can't be what's happening. But that's sort of how they were sort of trying to, you know, move the story or move what they were trying to do along. But as a viewer, it sort of just stopped me in my tracks because then it's like, okay, maybe we've gone a bit too far here. I don't know. Um, so that bugged me just a tiny bit. What also two other things that bugged me just a tiny bit, right? When all three of them were going to and I forget and I always confuse the characters like names, but I know who they are, like
It's
their real life
Mabel,
names
and
or
then
whatever.
for the life of me, I cannot ever put the like right
Charles,
Charles and something
um, Os-
Oliver.
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 Yeah, yeah. So when they were going to save when they were going to save the daughter, right?
Yeah.
And they were going up the steps, and I'm like, they knew that there was, or they had really good reason to believe that there was a killer there who could really kill her, right? And I'm like, we're really taking the time to have these old folks go up some steps with no weapon to confront a murderer, your daughter. I'm like, I know that the police have been the only police that you've really dealt with has been corrupt, but in this situation, your daughter's life on the line, you don't call for reinforcements. That was a little unbelievable, particularly when they sat on the steps to because he's like because they were tired. I'm like,
Mhm.
what are we doing here?
Mhm.
That took me out of it just a tad, just a tad. Um, and what was the sort of the other sort of nitpick that I had? Um, and I forget her name, but Cinda's her assistant. The the plan that she had to sort of like to um kill Bunny so that Cinda would have like a so that she would take on this new podcast that she wanted to do, or
Mhm.
at least that new story.
The Tina Fey
And
character.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then to sort of it just felt like a lot of like maneuvering for something that she it seems like ultimately she wanted like someone to take her seriously, and then when she saw that that wasn't going to happen with Cinda, it's like, no, well, now I have to pivot and have to take her out too. And I'm like, I felt like she should have probably figured that out a while back before, and probably realized that she was never going to get what she was looking for there. If her if the initial end game was to get Cinda Canning out of the picture, I would have sort of felt that all along. But her initial plan was just to sort of prop Cinda up again, and that just felt a little off. Um, but those are just itty bitty nits, man. I mean, I had a blast watching it. It was like when one went off, I was like, it's probably like 2 in the morning, but it's like, sleep or watch another. Sleep one sometimes, but it was just fun, man. It was just really fun. And I'm really excited and interested to see what they do with season three because it seems like it's obviously an entire world is open up to them almost.
Yeah. The show has kind of developed such a strong identity for itself that I do feel it could be dropped into a different building, different location, and still maintain tone and kind of this level of ridiculousness and this level of solving a mystery with moderately competent people and a few incompetent people. And I think it has a clear tone and approach. I also want to note that Kate appears to be cosplaying Mabel. The the headphones and the yellow
It's
shirt.
it's the
Oops.
yellow, yeah. I
Yeah.
like your beat. I
Yes,
Yeah.
like your beat.
it's a good look.
Mhm.
um yeah, I loved the latest season, but I think you're spot on. I'll give you a very hard and reductive question. Which season did you like better?
It's easy to just say two.
Really?
Um, yeah, because it has such kinetic energy from the very beginning, right? I mean, season one had to sort of set up what we're doing here, and season two sort of opened it with everyone wanting to know how did this. I mean, it just started like hitting the ground running. So I probably enjoyed season two more. Um, and it kind of felt like the better one in a number of ways. But I mean, that's just like saying like one was like a 9.5 and the other was like a 9.2, right? So
Would would either of you agree that season two is the better season, but season one's finale was a better finale?
Yes, that's very well put. To me, yes.
see, I had an issue with season one finale.
Mhm.
It just this sort of decision that Janice was Janice, right? That was her name.
Mhm.
Um, it's like. hey, I'm just going to like use this gas to kill everyone in the building. That just felt like a really tough leap, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so that was my primary hang up with the season one finale. Um, but I did like the sort of narrative of it better in terms of the revelations. I think they handled the revelations better. I just had like a tiny issue with that decision to go like, well, now I've got to kill everyone. But in terms of the reveal and the who
Mhm.
done it, I think season one's finale was better executed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I if there's anything I say that I think that they should try to work up to improve with the story, it has nothing to do with the first 9 episodes of their seasons. It's always the last episode of the season. It's how they wrap it up. And I kind of attribute they both had the let's just kill everybody at the end kind of ending, um, because the show occasionally likes to dance the line of it going into farcical or fantastical,
Mm.
just because there is a bit of parody almost within what they're doing as the story. The whole story is them being crime podcasters investigating a crime because they were podcasters. Like the whole thing is kind of cyclical in that way, and so it becomes a little bit parody and reveal of what the villain's doing. But I even if you want to do that, I think you still have to kind of give a little bit better explanation of motive, and at least with the Jan situation in season one, there were some motives of jealousy and heartbreak and things like that. While it was overboard, it was still like you could kind of see it. The season two motivations were a lot looser. Yeah, she had been wrong previously, but it was hard to point she had been wronged to killing this random other person, and so that, as well as what Carey said earlier with her supporting Cindy and her kind of find her murder basically, and how that's all framed within respect to why she wanted so much more respect than what she was getting. It's kind of a looser explanation, and I think they were in some ways waiting until the very end to decide who, if they wanted it to be her or Cindy to
Mm.
be the killer. And to be perfectly honest, I think Cindy would have had better motivations and it would have been a better reveal if it were Cindy instead of whatever her name was. I forgot to.
Well, she had to. Was it Becky?
Mm-hmm.
Was it Becky
Yeah,
and Poppy?
Mm-hmm.
And she was also
Poppy. That's what it was.
14. Yeah, 14 sandwich. Also was her nickname.
I
Was it
think with her,
liverwurst and
14.
marmalade? It was the liverwurst and marmalade sandwich, which
Mm-hmm.
was number 14. Oh, that's horrible sounding.
ugh, I think with having the
But
reveal that they did, choosing the killer that they did, I think they might have been leaning into this podcasty vibe where they didn't just want it to be a killer, they wanted it to tie into what they had been doing with podcasting all season. But I completely agree with Kate that it would have been a better reveal if they had gone a different path. And I think there were a few that we explored, and some of them I wouldn't write off as potential bad sources of bad. I'm not going to say bad people because one of our suspects was Mabel, but I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
write them off as somebody who'd come back because we saw Jan come back this season as well and, stir the pot a little bit and, even from prison. So I got the sense that nobody's ever really gone. There were a lot of recurring characters this season that were not just people inside the building. Well, Carrie, I'm glad that you enjoyed it and you can enjoy season 3 with us as well whenever that comes out. I should know, but I don't. Um, Kate, I'm going to toss it to you next. Tell us what else you watched and read this week.
So, what else I read and watched this week, I'll go pretty quick, was another combo of read then watch. So, there was the movie, it had a lot of drama to put enough, apparently, to put Really Darling to shame, although I don't really know what the drama was. They filmed the movie in 2014 and it came out in 2022. So, I don't know what happened, but something happened.
Wild.
Um, Wild. So the movie was called The King's Daughter. It was based on a book called The Moon and the Sun, I think it was. The book was all right. It was fine. It had a lot of good goals, and you could understand what the story was. There was nothing directly for me to complain about. It was more of just the prose itself was very stilted. It wasn't to my taste, so I found it quite boring, to be perfectly honest. But the purpose was fine. I got what they were trying to do. It was enjoyable enough. Um, the adaptation was atrocious, and not as a movie itself. It's already kind of bland and boring, and there's a lot of plot holes. It was okay, but then in respect to it being a adaptation, I'm not a purist. I don't think it has to be a pure adaptation for it to be a quality adaptation. Sometimes getting the vibe across, the message across, and making it enjoyable is plenty enough to me. This did neither,
Oh no.
especially since one of the biggest reveals in the entire book is that she is the king's illegitimate daughter. And why would you name the movie The Surprise? So there's there's a bunch of things that they also cut out. They combine tons and tons of characters. One specific combination is the combination of Count Lucian and Captain Yves, or Yves, I don't know. The captain was her brother, and the count was her love interest.
Okay.
So they kept the captain name, her brother's name, but they made her and him love interests. And
Oh,
I could not do it. The chemistry was great because the couple got married in real life. So you know the chemistry was at least
now I
decent.
have to watch
But
this. You know I'm a sucker for that kind of
her
thing.
yes. Yes, her having to say her brother's name because I read the book and I know that's her brother's name to this man and then kiss him. I'm like, no.
That's so weird. Why
I
would they switch such a random thing?
well, because it combines several characters because there's a lot of characters and a lot going on and I understand it. Although the ones they combined was very ableist, I
Okay.
guess is the best way to describe the decisions that were made. Um, there was a count. Lucian was a man afflicted with a lot of physical pain. He was atheist. He had a lot of different like things about his character that were so interesting.
Mhm.
And then they combined him with the brother, who was also like a very complex character, not a very likable character, but a complex character. And they just squeezed everything that was important about those two characters out and just left an attractive man to like fall in love with her, and that was it. The story of the so it's about her like she finds the mermaid, she has empathy for the mermaid, she lets the mermaid go much to the chagrin of the king. The
Uh-huh.
story arc yet again, they give the king a redemption that he doesn't deserve in the movie that's not in the book. I don't know why both of these things that I watched this week did that. There's
Stop redeeming
ultimatums.
undeserving men.
Yeah, I was like, it's not even that they're the main character. Why are you giving them the hero's arc, the redemption arc, when it should be about the main character and their growth? What is
Mhm.
happening here? So that was my big issue is at least if you have to do that, make the movie enjoyable, like Catherine called Birdie. Instead of making it one big, ew, that's her brother. Please stop.
Maybe it's like what would you say it was like 2014? Maybe they were like trying to do some like weird like incesty plot twist or something or like kind of fake you
I
out.
maybe.
Game
I
of
will
Thrones
say,
situation.
yeah, I will say there was a lot of cuts or direction or just like jumping from scene to scene that felt very forced. And then they had some narration that was only announced like this year from the great Julie Andrews. So I think what might have happened is they used as much narration as they possibly could to make a story out of the little bits and pieces they had.
Gotcha.
Um, and try to salvage the money they had sunk into this because there's no way they came out positive in this movie.
Well, the thing is, you said there's good chemistry, so maybe that's ultimately going to be the redeeming factor. when I inevitably
Yeah,
watch this garbage.
yeah. Let's
Well,
let's just hope. I mean, I at least enjoyed that aspect of it while I wasn't going, that's her brother, please stop.
like the name is such a random thing to switch. And if you wanted to change the main character's name, like
Yeah.
why would you not change it to just literally any other name than her brother in the book, even
Uh,
if you got
if
rid of her brother in the book?
yeah, if they had to combine those characters, which I do kind of understand why they did it, even though it basically made him milk toast compared to the two complex characters he was supposed to be. At least call him like Captain Lucian. Like pay homage to both the characters he was, and just call him Captain Lucian. So he's not the brother from the book, but
Hmm.
he's also not the Count that the
Right.
Lucian was, and it's very clear that they're combined for people like the three people that probably read it and then watched it like me.
Yeah. Well, tell us what else you read this week.
So I also read uh, Jeanette McCurdy's memoir,
Yes.
I'm Glad My Mom Died. I read it yesterday, and it is very, very good. It is very well written. It's very upsetting, but it's not written in a way that's directly overly descriptive or gratuitous. It's just explaining things in a way because she wrote it very purposefully in first person present tense. So as a child, all the things that are in her childhood are written from the perspective of a child with childlike tone. And it's that decision that makes some seemingly mundane situations feel so much more impactful when
Hmm.
she's telling you about how emotionally abusive her mother especially, but her whole family was.
Hmm. I've read a few
So
excerpts from the book, but I have
it's
not
very
read the entire book, and I got
mhm.
from it that it is excellent and that it would be very disturbing to read the whole thing. I have certainly not done so, but I I'm interested to at some point. But overall, would you say you
So
enjoyed it or
Yeah,
was it more disturbing?
I it wasn't there was only I would say the second half to me when it gets far more into descriptors about her relationship with her body and with food and things like that it gets more generally upsetting, because it's so direct and forthright and honest about it. Whereas it could be upsetting if you really listen to and focus on the childhood aspects, but there's not a lot of detail in those. It's more of the fact that she didn't want to act,
Hmm.
and how much her wants and desires were not listened to as a child. Um, the the part that got me the worst actually was the very final chapter where she is basically fully just admitting like this is what happened. This like basically it's almost affirmations in a really sad way of like just fully just saying these definitive statements about what she had gone through and the situations and relationships she had experienced in her childhood.
Hmm.
so here's one of the things that so you mentioned that she was talking about in the book, she was talking about sort of the pressures or manipulations or whatever the case may be that she got from her family. So more than just her mom.
Yeah, all of her family was quite uh, so they lived with their grandparents for a lot of the time. Their grandparents had a very odd relationship. Her grandmother will repeat, like into adulthood would call her a bitch and things like this, and were very hurtful in language. The grandfather really seemed to be the only person that ever advocated for her, and was only more to be telling her mother she seems to have OCD. It wouldn't be a good idea to go take her to a doctor. Just she does all these different things. It's very clear that she has something going on. The dad was very emotionally distant, and spoiler alert if you don't want to know the whole story, it probably has to do with the fact that he was not her biological father and she didn't know until she was 21 or something
Wow.
like that. And that she finally did get to meet her biological father, but even that relationship, because of everything that's happened, is kind of
How much does she go into, and I don't want this to sound cliche, but I mean, she's obviously at a point where she's able to share this story. How much in the book does she talk about how she was able to get to where she is now, which, which we would hope and have to imagine the figure is a better place, right? Does she talk much about that journey in terms of
yeah.
what she did practically or what?
So it's I'm not sure if it's exactly half, but the first half is pretty much her childhood, and it's all the way through her mother's death. The second half is her dealing with it. Uh, her in her childhood, her mother taught her of eating disorders, and after her mother's death, she kind of leaned on them as a crutch and fell very deep into them. So a lot of the second half is her explaining how she spiraled into these, as well as finally admitting she had a problem and getting out of that, as well as substance abuse and things like that, realizing she needed help, getting help for that before she could ever confront the issue of her mother's abuse. There's a segment where she's just going to therapy for her bulimia, and uh, the therapist basically says that she was abused by her mother as a child, and the concept of having to confront that, she completely shut that out and was like, nope, I'm good, thanks, no more, no more from you. And it wasn't until much later that she went back to therapy and found somebody that was only going to focus on her bulimia, so that she could get that handled before she could ever try to confront real truths of her childhood.
It sounds
And
incredibly intense,
yeah,
but what an impressive thing to be able to put together while still, she's still quite young, to be able to put that all together and document that journey. I'm sure it's just a very basic level. It sounds like it's a very well written and interesting documentation of somebody's journey, but I'm sure it'll also help a lot of people who may unfortunately have similar situations. But I really
yeah.
enjoyed the excerpts I read. It's
Yeah.
good to hear the whole thing is good. I'm going to inject just a little bit of lightness
Mhm.
here into the end with what else I watched this week. So, shout out Abbott Elementary. It's going to be on here shortly tonight. That has been having such a wonderful season. That was not a very grammatically correct sentence, but I'm just beside myself. It's so good. They've been having a wonderful season. They, I've heard, are going to have holiday episodes and guest stars and all kinds of stuff. But they are also starting the development of their slow burn, which I was melting in a puddle about last season. They're so good, but they have there's been a subtle change this season where we're starting to see some like more objectively romantic moments that the two of them might not be acknowledging are romantic. They've got like a special knock and they're gazing into each other's eyes for just a little longer. So good. 100 out of 10. Watch Abbott Elementary for your weekly dose of serotonin. The other thing that I've been marathoning is Selena plus Chef, in the absence of Only Murders in the Building. Got to get my fix somewhere. Whether you like cooking shows or not, and I'm obsessed with cooking shows, like obsessed, but whether you like cooking shows or not, you will like it. Selena plus Chef, so good. Excellent. And on the opposite end, whatever the thing that is the opposite of serotonin, I've been watching House of Dragon. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm really loving it so far, but everybody in the show is awful and is doing bad things and experiencing bad things, and it's grotesque, and people die and people get murdered, and it's just like it's a lot. However, the two women who are like basically vying for either being queen or being the queen's or being the king's wife or being the king's mother, like they're basically, this is this long queen to queen chess game of like, they one was queen by marrying the other one's dad, and then the other one got queendom by the dad dying, and yeah, and they're the same age. It's like a whole thing. Anyways, the other one gets the queendom by the dad dying and then like inheriting the lineage instead of this girl's oldest son getting it, but then the lineage is supposed to go to her, but she's going to try to use the king's word to get it back to her. So there's just this, it's very chess gamey, but the two actresses who play these two wonderful women have fantastic chemistry, and like all of their scenes where they're like about to kill each other are like toxically extremely flirty as well. So good. Watch it for that, but don't watch it for any happiness at all. Also, The Good Doctor is back and it is fantastic. Although they broke up my ship in the first episode. We're out here.
There was a moment where I thought you were talking about Leah and Sean. I was like, I thought they got married, and then I remember who you're talking about. I was like, never mind.
No, Leah and Sean are still doing great, and they're still my
okay.
ship. But like Morgan and Resnick, like everybody except me knew that they weren't going to last and that they were toxic, and they've been toxic this entire time. But still, when they broke up, so she could like focus on her career, and so he could not be like stressed out from like being with somebody like her. I'm like, but why? Well, they're so cute together, anyways. And then they're trying to set up what's her name, Jordan, with one of the new guys, Daniel, and that ship. I've never seen worse chemistry in my entire life. First of all, I really thought his character was gay. We don't need to go into that further, but I think he should have been. Her character, having her do this whole like, I don't like him, he's not my type, okay, he likes me, okay, maybe he is my type. That's such a disservice. She was so like matter of fact and straightforward and knew herself. Like, why are you having her anyways? Let me not go on The Good Doctor rant. Still fantastic show. The ships, they're leaning into their Grey's Anatomy roots. It's fine. And that's all. We will be back October 26th to talk about probably Love is Blind and Handmaid's Tale, which is I think what I said last time, but my schedule was wrong. But next time I think we will be talking about those two things and probably other stuff like the end of Andor and where they're going with this whole Stargirl thing, how She-Hulk ends. She-Hulk will be ended or ending next time we chat, so there'll be a lot to talk about. Thank you for joining me, Carey and Kate. This was lovely. I have your information in the description below if anybody wants to chat with you about all the things we talked about today. And I will see you again in about 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.